I don't remember how long I stood there in the rain, just that the water had started to seep through my shoes and my left sock had slipped down into the arch. I didn't move. Not when the suitcase burst open on the concrete, not when my toothbrush rolled into the gutter, not even when she said it, the one sentence that split the air like a snapped bone. "You'll never see a dime of my money, you old witch." Her voice was so steady, so sure. The lights from the house she'd bought 3 days ago were still too bright, glaring down like judgment. She hadn't even taken down the sold sign. The ribbons from the real estate office still clung to the banister like party streamers, and there she stood, in front of them all, my daughter, her boyfriend, and the silence that came between us. She didn't flinch, not when the suitcase hit the pavement, not when my blouse, the one I used to wear to all her parent-teacher meetings, landed in a puddle. He crossed his arms behind her, barely older than her son, grinning like he'd won something, and maybe he had. He didn't have to throw me out himself. She did it for him. I didn't cry. Not then. The tears had already dried inside my skull, somewhere behind the eyes. I bent down, picked up a sock, then another. My hand trembled, but I kept folding. I folded everything, slowly, carefully, as if neatness could grant me dignity. She watched me, those same eyes I used to kiss goodnight, now just flat glass. "You're a leech," she said, louder now. "I worked hard for this." I wanted to say it. I did. The rent I paid, the babies I raised, the nights I held her hair back while she vomited tequila and self-loathing, the credit cards I helped repair, the bills I split from my pension without once calling it a loan. I wanted to scream that I had more sweat in her success than she ever did, but I didn't. Not because I was too shocked or too weak, because I had already decided she would not see me break. I clutched the handle of that cheap, stubborn suitcase and stepped backward, one foot in the rain, one in the mud. Her boyfriend smirked again, as if to say, "That's right, walk away." So I did. There's a silence only a mother knows, the one that follows your child choosing someone else over you, not because they had to, but because they could. That silence doesn't roar or echo. It simply folds you in, and I let it. I didn't look back. I didn't ask where the boys were. I thanked whatever mercy still lingered in the world that they hadn't seen it. Their grandmother pushed to the curb like a bag of trash on recycling night. They weren't home, she said. I don't think she said it for me. I think she said it so they wouldn't have to lie about it later. By the time I made it to the sidewalk, my hair had pasted to my scalp, and the mascara I forgot to wash off had carved 2 long trails into my cheeks. I stood under the street lamp, blinking through the blur, as her voice sliced one last time across the rain. "You don't belong here anymore." And maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't. But that house, that driveway, that ticket, none of it belonged to her either. She just didn't know it yet. There used to be a rhythm to our weeks, back before her phone stopped lighting up with overdue notices and started buzzing with calls from real estate agents. Tuesdays were for groceries. Thursdays, if the mood was right, we'd swing by the gas station on the way home. She'd say something like, "Pick a good one, Mom," with a grin. Too wide for someone who still hadn't paid the water bill. And I'd chuckle, tuck a $2 ticket into the front of the grocery bag and pretend we weren't dreaming. It wasn't about winning, not really. It was about what winning meant, an escape hatch, a fantasy, something shinier than chipped countertops and toddler tantrums. We had this little routine. She liked birthdays. I chose random numbers. She said if she ever hit it big, we'd split it down the middle. "Duplex life, Mom," she'd say. "You get your own place. I get free babysitting." And I'd smile like I hadn't heard the punchline before. Sometimes we lined the tickets up on the table like tarot cards. She'd point at one and say, "That's the one," always with that same hopefulness that lived in the cracks between job interviews and second chances. I never believed we'd win, but I believed her when she said she had me. I got you, Mom. She used to say that a lot. I got you. I remember one night we were folding laundry together, which meant I was folding, and she was half watching a reality show with the volume too high. She picked up one of her old sweatshirts and held it to her nose. "This smells like struggle," she joked. 10 million would change everything. Then she winked at me and said, "Don't worry. When I make it, you're coming too." I held on to that moment longer than I should have, longer than was fair to either of us. Because when the tide finally came in, when the money actually landed, it didn't lift both boats, just hers, and it knocked mine clean off the dock. But before that, before the silence, the slammed doors, the new boyfriend, and the glittering staircase, there was still a version of us that made sense, a version where we shared pizza on discount Tuesdays and swapped scratch tickets like sacred vows, where she let her guard down long enough to cry into my shoulder about how hard it all was, and I believed her. God help me, I believed her. I believed her when she said she'd never leave me behind, when she whispered late at night, "I'd be dead without you." When she stood in the kitchen barefoot, holding a mug that said, "Strong women raise strong daughters," and told me she hoped her kids would grow up to love her like I loved mine. Maybe that was the cruelest part, that she meant it once, that she really thought we were a team, right up until she didn't need one anymore. We'd joked about the numbers before, laughed about it. But the day I bought that ticket, the one she would later claim was hers, I remember feeling something different. Not hope, not luck, just stillness. Like something was shifting, quiet and inevitable. I didn't buy that ticket because I thought it would save me. I bought it because rituals are what hold you together when everything else is slipping. It was habit, it was muscle memory, and it was mine. She never asked, never looked, never flipped it over, just plucked it from the fridge like it had always been hers. I wonder if she even paused that night when she slipped it into her purse. I wonder if her hand trembled, if her chest tightened, or if she was already gone, already building a future where I didn't exist. It started small, a quiet question, too casual to mean nothing. We were watching the news, and the anchor mentioned a winning lottery ticket sold near our neighborhood. She shifted on the couch and asked if I'd bought one. I said yes, picked it up with the groceries on Monday. She didn't look at me, just nodded and went back to her phone. The next morning, the ticket was gone. It wasn't in the usual drawer, not under the magnet shaped like a smiley face, not behind the receipts, not inside the recipe box. I looked everywhere, slower than I should have, careful not to wake the voice already rising inside me. I told myself, maybe it slipped somewhere, maybe I'd tossed it by mistake, but my hands remembered putting it there. I remembered signing it, like I always did. Out of habit more than belief. She didn't mention it. She didn't ask if I'd won. She just started cooking more often, humming louder in the kitchen, spending more time locked in her room. I didn't push. I'd spent years excusing her silences, explaining her mood swings to myself before she ever had to. Then she came home with champagne. She didn't knock, just burst through the door and held up a check like a trophy. Her eyes were too bright, her voice high with disbelief. 10 million, she said. Can you believe it? She kept saying we're rich, we're getting out, we did it, like it still meant something. But her grip on the check told me otherwise. So did the way she never once mentioned how, or when, or even where she'd bought her winning ticket. I smiled. I told her it was amazing. I even let her hug me, though she felt like someone else. That night, she made dinner, set the table, poured wine, lit candles. We hadn't done that in years. She toasted to starting fresh, and I clinked my glass without saying a word. The next day, the magnet was still on the fridge, alone. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even ask, because I needed to be sure, and deep down, I already was. She never bought tickets, never stood in line, hated the small talk with cashiers. I always bought them, always signed them, always tucked them behind that magnet. I kept quiet because I wasn't ready to name what had happened. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly how far she'd go with a lie she thought no one else could see. 3 days after she waved the check in my face, she was gone. There was no note, no goodbye, no explanation, just silence, as if she'd been a passing storm that never intended to stay. I woke early that morning with a stiff hip and a restless mind, went out to the back garden to pull weeds like I often did when I needed to think. When I came back inside, the house felt different, lighter, hollower. I noticed the quiet before I noticed what was missing. Her closet stood half empty. Her favorite mug, the one I gave her when she graduated, the one that said, "Strong women raise strong daughters," wasn't beside the sink. The toothbrush she left on the bathroom counter was gone. I stared at the space it had occupied, small and pink and ordinary, and felt something give way inside me. It wasn't just that she left, it was how she left. On tiptoes, without sound, like I was something shameful to be escaped. Not a mother, not even a person, just a burden, best removed before the real life began. It was the neighbor who told me what really happened. Mr. Frank, out watering his roses, leaned over the fence and said he'd seen a moving truck around 5 that morning. 2 men loading boxes, my daughter directing them in a robe and heels, calm, efficient. She didn't look rushed. She looked ready. I nodded, said thank you, then went back inside and sat down at the kitchen table, the same spot where we used to eat scrambled eggs on Monday mornings, where I once helped her fill out job applications while the boys watched cartoons too loud in the next room. I looked around the kitchen, familiar and worn, peeling wallpaper, chipped mugs, a crack in the linoleum I never got around to fixing. It had never been fancy, but it was ours. Now it was just mine again. I walked to the fridge. The magnet was still there, that stupid, cheerful face, and below it, a blank surface where my ticket had once lived. It wasn't a question anymore. It was an answer I didn't want. She took it. Quietly, completely, like it had always belonged to her. I didn't call, didn't send a message. I'd spent too many years trying to be chosen, hoping that love would be enough to remind her I existed, but love isn't memory. It doesn't keep people from walking away. I sat still and let the house settle around me. Every creak in the floorboard, every hum of the old fridge, every breeze tapping the window, familiar sounds in a suddenly unfamiliar life. The weight of what she had taken pressed down slow and heavy. Not just money, not just trust, but years of something I didn't know how to name. Shared history, worn-in rituals. A quiet thread between 2 people who once believed in each other. I opened the drawer where I kept the mail and pulled out a folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside, grocery receipts, old appointment cards, and tucked between them, a photo. Blurry, off-center. A picture I'd taken of the ticket the day I bought it, before I even knew the numbers mattered. A small thing, a keepsake. Just in case. Now it was proof. She never turned the ticket over. That was her mistake. Not the taking, not even the leaving, but the certainty. The kind that comes when someone's so used to grabbing what they want that they forget anything might already belong to someone else. I remembered the moment clearer than most things. Standing at the gas station counter, purse slung over my shoulder, milk in one hand, keys in the other. The clerk, Ben, who always called me Miss Evelyn, smiled and asked if I wanted a lottery ticket. I almost said no. I almost walked out. but something nudged me, quiet and instinctive. I said yes. Quick pick. $2. He slid it across the counter and handed me the receipt. I tucked both into my purse, then paused, pulled out a pen, and signed the back. Not because I thought I'd win, just habit. Something I started doing a decade ago when a cousin claimed a scratcher that wasn't hers. After that, I signed everything, even when the odds were impossible, even when the tickets ended up in the trash. That one didn't. I pinned it to the fridge with the magnet, meant to check the numbers later. I forgot. Life got busy. Dinner needed cooking. The boys needed baths. She needed soothing after another job interview that turned into a night out. By the time I remembered, the ticket was gone. And now I had a blurry photo, a time-stamped receipt, my name in ink, and a memory sharp enough to cut. I didn't go to her. I didn't need her to confirm what I already knew. She had the check, the money, the mansion, the new smile, but what she didn't have was a signature, because she never thought to look, never considered that something so small could matter. That was the difference between us. I lived in the details, in grocery lists and clipped coupons, in medicine schedules and school permission slips. I knew the weight of small things. She only saw the headlines, the big flashes of luck and success. She thought a winning number was enough. I pulled on my coat, slipped the receipt and photo into my pocket, and walked back to the gas station. It was late morning. The same bell above the door rang as I stepped in. The same shelves, the same hum of refrigeration. Ben was behind the counter, sorting cigarette cartons. He looked up and smiled. "Miss Evelyn," he said. "Long time." I smiled back, tight but honest. I asked if he remembered the day I bought the ticket. He paused, thoughtful, then nodded. "Yeah, you were in line behind that guy yelling on the phone, said something about a busted deal." I remembered too. I told him the ticket was missing, that someone else was claiming it, that I signed the back. His eyes changed then. Not suspicious, not nervous, just focused. He offered to check the security footage. My knees almost gave. 10 minutes later, we stood in the back room. The screen was small, grainy, but there I was, my coat, my hair tucked under a knit cap. I reached for the ticket, pulled out a pen, signed it, and tucked it into my purse. There it was, quiet, undeniable proof. I took out my phone and asked if I could record the screen. Ben nodded. I didn't say much, just stood there, holding on to the moment, letting it settle into my chest like heat returning to frozen skin. Later that afternoon, I called the state lottery office, told them the date, the place, the signature, the photo, and now, surveillance. The woman on the phone didn't sound shocked. She just asked for the evidence, said the claim could be contested, that they'd open an investigation, that if my name was on the back and matched the footage, the payout could be frozen. I asked only one thing. Could they stop the money from moving? "Yes," she said, calm and certain. "Once we open the case, everything will pause." I thanked her, not because I was grateful, but because for the first time in weeks, something had finally stood still, on my terms. The footage was only 10 seconds long, but it held more weight than anything she'd said in 10 years. Grainy, unpolished, no sound, just me in a heavy coat, standing at a gas station counter like I had 1,000 times before. I watched myself slide a bill across the counter, reach for the ticket, and pull out a pen. My hand moved slowly, almost absent-minded, but the motion was unmistakable. I signed the back, folded it once, slipped it into my purse. Ordinary, unremarkable. And now, everything. Ben stood beside me, arms crossed, eyes on the screen. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Some truths don't require commentary. When I asked if I could record it, he nodded without hesitation. I lifted my phone, made sure the date and time showed clearly. My signature wasn't visible from the camera, but the act of writing it was. That was enough, especially when paired with the photo I'd taken at home, the receipt tucked in my folder, and my name written in ink, not for drama, not for memory, but for ownership. It's strange how justice begins. Not in a courtroom, not with a confrontation, just a small room behind a gas station and a single moment played back frame by frame. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with the evidence spread before me, photo, footage, receipt. I didn't need to organize them. I knew exactly where each piece belonged. I had spent my life holding the fragments of other people's chaos, medical bills, custody letters, school forms signed in my name. This time, I held mine. I called the lottery office again and sent everything. The woman who answered was the same as before. Her voice didn't change. She didn't offer sympathy or disbelief, just clarity. She said the claim was now under review. The payout had not been finalized, and yes, the funds could be frozen while they investigated. I asked if they would notify the current claimant. She paused, then said, "Once the freeze is official, the banks will handle it." I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumph. Just stillness. A slow quiet that stretched out and let me breathe again, not because I'd won anything, but because I had stopped being invisible. I didn't call my daughter, didn't message, didn't warn, because it wasn't a threat, it was a correction. She had built a life on something borrowed, then flaunted it like she'd earned every inch. New shoes, new friends, new names tagged in photos that excluded the woman who had kept her lights on and her children fed. She called it independence. She called me dead weight, but none of it could survive a signature she never thought to look for. That night, I made tea. Not because I needed it, but because I'd always done it after hard days. The cup was chipped, the water too hot. Still, I sat and drank it slowly, watching the night settle through the window like dust. I thought about all the times I'd said nothing, when she forgot my birthday, when she rolled her eyes at my cooking, when she left me waiting at the school gates because she'd lost track of time again. I thought about every time I let love excuse the lack of care. And now, I let silence serve a different purpose. It wasn't revenge, it was repair. The world didn't need to see her undone. I didn't post a thing, didn't tell a neighbor. But in that small kitchen, surrounded by proof that I wasn't crazy, I felt something steadier than relief. I felt seen, not as someone's mother, not as a placeholder or a backup plan, but as a woman who had told the truth, even when no one was listening, and soon the silence wouldn't be mine alone. She didn't slow down. If anything, she became louder, as if each dollar she spent could drown out the silence I left behind. Her photos filled every corner of the internet, designer bags, rooftop lounges, polished marble floors she now called home. She posed in borrowed luxury like she'd been born into it, captioning every image with mantras about worth, growth, elevation. She wasn't just celebrating, she was rewriting. There was no sign I'd ever existed, no thank you, no mention of shared years, no trace of the woman who had paid the heating bill in Januaries when her own pockets were empty. She posted photos of herself draped across chaise lounges, drink in hand, legs crossed at impossible angles, smiling with perfect teeth. I recognized the smile. It wasn't joy, it was conquest. She wrote things like, "From broke single mom to millionaire queen." I read them while sitting at my kitchen table, the one with the chipped corner and the stubborn drawer that always stuck. She toasted with people she hadn't spoken to in years. High school friends who once called her a mess, cousins who'd vanished after the second baby. Now they were back, leaving comments drenched in praise. "You deserve it. You earned it. Keep shining." She didn't answer my calls, but then again, I never made any. I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't correct. She thought my silence meant permission. She mistook absence for surrender. What she didn't see were the hands moving beneath her feet. The state had acknowledged the claim. The investigation was formal now, her payout frozen. The lottery commission halted all transfers. The banks flagged her accounts, but she hadn't noticed. Yet. The machinery of systems moves slower than gossip, but infinitely more precise. And when it catches up, it doesn't knock. It closes. Still, she partied. Still, she posted. Still, she tagged luxury brands and realtors. Her page was a catalog of fantasy, but I saw it for what it was, a scaffolding of impulse. She wasn't building a life. She was renting a mask. Meanwhile, I sat in a quiet lawyer's office across from a woman named Dana, referred by a neighbor who'd once told me I was too kind for my own good. Dana wore glasses with heavy frames and spoke in short, solid sentences. She read everything, my folder, the receipts, the screenshots, the blurry photograph, the video. She didn't raise an eyebrow. She just nodded, once, then said, "This isn't a misunderstanding. It's theft. You have a case." I nodded back. Dana filed the formal claim within the hour, sent the full packet to the lottery office, flagged the signature, submitted the video. She told me not to worry about public attention. "The story belongs to the system now," she said, and I believed her. I didn't tell anyone, not the neighbor who brought me leftovers, not the pharmacist who asked if I was okay after seeing my daughter on the news. I kept quiet, because the loudest thing I had ever done was finally in motion. I let the evidence speak where my voice had failed. I let the weight of truth do what years of patience couldn't, and still, she partied. She posted boomerangs of champagne glasses clinking against city skylines, photos of the boys unattended in the background while she laughed in sequins. I paused longest on that one, not out of anger, but grief. Not for myself, for them. Because she had not only taken something from me, she had built their new world on sand. And the tide was already coming in. The silence came first. Her social media, once overflowing with noise, filters, captions, celebrations, went still. No new posts, no stories, no rooftop selfies, just absence, clean and total, like a light switched off. I noticed it the way you notice the absence of a headache you've lived with too long. The quiet didn't feel like peace. It felt like warning. Dana had called the night before. Her voice was steady as ever. The state commission had confirmed receipt of all documentation. The ticket was registered under my name. The footage matched. The investigation had formally shifted from a dispute to a case. Then came the freeze. Bank accounts, credit lines, remaining prize funds, all suspended pending final determination. I asked if I needed to notify my daughter. Dana gave a small, almost amused laugh. "No," she said. "The banks will take care of that." And they did. I didn't see it happen, but I imagined it, her waking up, slipping into a silk robe, walking barefoot across tile still new enough to smell like glue. She'd tap her banking app, ready to move money, book another trip, buy another piece of someone else's life, and the screen would flash, access denied, account suspended. I imagined the confusion first, then the panic, the frantic calls, the disbelief, the rising volume, the realization. I didn't need to see it to know it by heart. She had never prepared for interruption. Her life moved on momentum and entitlement. When one thing failed, someone always stepped in. Me, usually. But not this time. This time, the floor didn't catch her. The cousin called me that same afternoon, one who hadn't spoken to either of us in years, until the money started flowing. Her voice was a tangle of curiosity and secondhand dread. She'd seen my daughter in a boutique, yelling at a cashier after 3 of her cards were declined in a row. A scarf she couldn't buy, a tantrum she couldn't control. Eyes wild, hands trembling, storming out with nothing but her fury. I listened quietly, offered no opinion, just let the image settle. By then, the title to her house was already in legal review. The luxury car leased under the name, now stripped from the claim. The handbags, the jewelry, the staged lifestyle, all tied to purchases made on funds, under dispute. The longer she had spent pretending it was hers, the more clearly it now wasn't. But I didn't gloat. I didn't allow space for that. Because this wasn't about punishment. It wasn't even about the money. It was about being erased, then reappearing. Not through shouting, not through spectacle, but through proof. Clean, undeniable, mine. I spent that morning in the same kitchen she once called outdated. The curtain still frayed at the edge. The chair still wobbled slightly when I leaned a certain way. The kettle whistled faintly on the stove, and I let the moment hold. I had done what she thought I never would. I had stopped holding the net beneath her, and she had never once looked down. She called at 1:43 in the afternoon. I let it ring twice before I answered. Her name blinked on the screen like it still had power over me, like it could still pull me back into a story I no longer lived inside. I didn't speak first. I didn't need to. Her voice came through raw, jagged, stripped of polish. You stole my life. Not hello. Not are you there. Just that. I let the silence stretch long enough to feel her breathing. I pictured her in a room too big for comfort, surrounded by things she hadn't paid for, realizing too late that they never really belonged to her. She went on. Accusations, questions, fragments of panic dressed up as anger. You think this is justice? You humiliated me. How am I supposed to face people now? Still, I waited. And when I finally spoke, my voice came low, unshaken, shaped by years of restraint. You could start, I said, by saying thank you. She didn't respond at first. I could hear the stumble behind her silence. Then, for what? I exhaled slowly, not because I needed to calm myself, but because truth takes breath to carry its full weight. For the 5 years I kept this house running when you couldn't keep a job, for the credit cards I paid off in your name, for raising your boys while you went to interviews that ended in hotel rooms or bars, for not calling the police the day you walked out with something that wasn't yours. She tried to interrupt. You're lying. But her voice cracked halfway through, and I didn't stop. I have proof. I signed the ticket. The footage was verified. I could have taken it back quietly, let the system correct it without noise. But you made sure everyone heard your version, didn't you? You told the world you'd made it on your own, so I told the truth and let them listen. That was when she broke. Not softly, not gently. It wasn't remorse. It was collapse. I heard it in the way her breathing shifted, jagged, shallow, desperate. You've ruined everything. Her words stumbled, thick with the kind of fear that comes when the scaffolding falls and there's no one left to pretend it's still standing. No, I said, calm as clean water. You built this ruin. I just stopped pretending it was a palace. She went quiet again. I didn't fill the space. I'd learned by now that silence is not absence, it's authority. She tried again, softer this time, almost pleading. I bought the house, the car, the furniture. It's all gone now, isn't it? I didn't offer comfort. I didn't try to soften the blow. I've already donated half, I said, each word a clean cut, to shelters, to single mothers who fight for their children, not discard them, to women who were never told they could say no to being used. She gasped, a sharp, stunned sound, but there was no fire left behind it. You're insane, she whispered. No, I said, quiet but certain. I'm done being your shadow. Then I hung up. No final lesson, no warning, just the click of a door closing for the last time. She showed up 3 days later, no call, no warning, just a frantic knock at my front door, like the world still owed her urgency. I didn't answer right away. I watched through the side window, curtain barely parted, as she stood on the porch in yesterday's clothes, hair undone, eyeliner smudged into gray shadows beneath her eyes. The woman who once posed in rooftop lounges and designer shoes now stood barefoot, holding nothing but an empty look. When I finally opened the door, only a sliver, just enough to meet her eyes, she didn't smile. She didn't apologize. "We need to talk," she said. I didn't move. There was no need to invite her in. I had already learned what happened when I let her too close. She pushed forward, not physically, but with tone. Urgent, sharp. "You can't do this to me." The words sat there, untouched. I didn't answer. She filled the space with desperation, anger threaded into every word. "Okay, fine. Maybe I messed up. But freezing everything, taking it all back, that's not justice. That's revenge." I tilted my head. Not in mockery, just recognition. It was always this, her story being the only one that counted. Her version of pain eclipsing everything else. "You called me a leech," I said, evenly. "You posted my face like a warning sign, like I was something to be escaped." She opened her mouth, then closed it. The pause stretched long. "I need help," she said finally. There it was, not regret, not remorse, just need. I let the silence answer her first, watched her shift her weight, eyes flicking around the porch like maybe someone else might step in. She looked smaller, not younger, not fragile, just unrooted, like someone who had built a life without knowing where the foundation began. "You've made your point," she said, voice harder now, more brittle. "You've got your money. Your name's on the check. Happy now? Can we go back to normal?" Normal. I thought about what that used to mean. Me carrying her weight, funding her restarts, watching her children while she found herself again and again. I thought about all the times I gave until I forgot what it meant to keep anything for myself. And I thought about that ticket, how she didn't even pause before taking it, how easy it had been for her to leave me behind. "No," I said. Her jaw dropped. She blinked like she hadn't heard me right. "What?" "Goodbye." I didn't repeat it. I didn't soften it. I just began to close the door. She lunged, not with her body, but with voice. "You'll regret this," she shouted. "You think money can buy peace? You think it can buy you out of being my mother?" I paused, hand on the door. "No," I said, "but it bought me out of your life." And then I closed the door. Not with force, not with finality, but with clarity. Behind it, the air was still, clean, mine. The house was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that comes from loss. This was something else. It was the kind of quiet that feels earned, not silence as absence, but silence as proof that you no longer owe anyone your noise. She didn't call again. Not that day, not the next. And I didn't wait. I no longer counted her pauses like warnings or read her silences like questions. There were no more explanations to give, no more parts of myself left to hand over in the name of patience. I spent the following morning, as I always had, tea, a slow breakfast, the paper folded neatly across the table. The curtains still let in a sliver of light that fell across the same spot on the floor where her boys used to scatter their toys. The rug there was worn. Not from damage, just memory. And for the first time in a long while, memory didn't hurt. The press conference had come and gone. Short, procedural, unglamorous. My name spoken clearly, my ownership verified, the narrative returned to the person who had never needed to raise her voice to deserve the truth. No headlines, no viral footage, just a correction, logged and archived, like any other record that finally matched what was real. Dana sent me a copy of the confirmation letter, the full amount transferred, the claim under my name, no contest, no more delay. She said I could make a statement if I wanted, but I declined. What could I possibly add? She once told me I was too quiet, that people wouldn't know who I was if I didn't speak louder, demand space, carve out a voice. But I've never believed volume made someone visible. I'd always believed presence did, steadiness, memory, the way you show up again and again, even when no one claps for it. I hadn't changed. Not really. But I'd stopped holding on to the parts of me that only existed to make her feel full. With the funds, I didn't move into a mansion. I didn't buy pearls or post announcements. I paid off the mortgage, repaired the sagging back fence, bought a new kettle, sent an anonymous donation to the women's shelter downtown, the one she used to call depressing. I wrote a check big enough to cover their rent for a year and signed it without my name. Then I sat on the back steps of my own house, warm tea in hand, and watched a breeze move through the garden. Like a breath I'd forgotten how to take. This wasn't about money. It never was. It was about standing still when someone tries to erase you, about choosing not to chase someone who has already decided you are disposable, about letting the truth catch up without needing to run beside it. She had believed I would always be there, waiting, soft, ready to forgive. But even softness has a spine. Even silence has a threshold. And dignity doesn't come with a second invitation. They say the greatest revenge is living well. But I don't think this is revenge. It's relief. The morning of the press conference, I tied my hair back with the same barrette I'd worn to her high school graduation. Not out of sentiment, just habit. The blouse I chose was plain, something I'd saved for church holidays and quiet Sundays. No labels, no shine. But it was mine. Dana drove. She didn't ask if I was nervous. She didn't say much at all. Her presence was steady, like the hum of the engine or the way sunlight fell in lines across the dashboard. We didn't need to rehearse. The truth has no script. The auditorium was small, just a local government building with folding chairs and a podium flanked by 2 flags that hung too still. The reporters were polite, but distracted, already glancing at their phones, not expecting much. No drama, no spectacle, just a correction filed in real time. An official in a Navy suit stepped up first. His voice was clear, practiced. He read from a statement confirming that the previously reported lottery winner had been misidentified due to incomplete documentation, and that the rightful claimant had now been verified through signature, purchase records, and video footage. Then he called my name. I stood. My knees didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I walked to the podium, rested both hands on the sides, and looked out at a room of strangers. My name is Evelyn Markham, I said. I purchased the winning ticket. I signed it. And I am the rightful winner. That was all. No stories, no accusations, no vindication. I stepped away before anyone could ask questions. Outside, the wind picked up slightly. Dana handed me a folded envelope with the finalized documentation. The whole thing had taken less than 10 minutes, and yet something in the world had shifted, quietly, firmly, in my favor. I didn't call her. She found out like I had, alone, standing in a place she thought belonged to her, holding something that no longer answered to her name. I heard later that she tried to post one last photo, a cocktail against a rooftop skyline, pearls strung too tight around her neck. Manifesting more millions, she wrote in the caption. She didn't know, not yet. I'd planned it that way. The minimal notice, the quiet room, the absence of cameras. By the time the press release reached the news outlets, it was already done. The accounts frozen, the assets under review. Her name scrubbed from the check that had never been hers to sign. She didn't scream this time. She didn't post. She just vanished from the feed like she'd run out of battery or attention, and I didn't chase. Let her discover the ending on her own. Let her realize, quietly, that I never needed applause or revenge. Just truth. Just return. Just enough to remind the world, and myself, that I had never disappeared. I had only stepped back. Now I moved forward. Not into fame, not into headlines, just into my life. A porch repaired, a cupboard restocked, a chair that no longer wobbled, a piece that couldn't be stolen. She once said I was too quiet. But the truth spoke louder than either of us ever had.